Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. I reviewed a few Borescopes over the years. One is part of my Cheap Chinese Gear series all the way back in April 2017, and another in November 2022. Now, the more expensive scope was unfortunately a complete bust when it came to rifle bores, though in fairness to it, it was an endoscope and not a borescope. But I did use the cheap one until I gave up the ghost a while back. But that left me without a borescope, and how is a man to fret about the condition of his rifle bores? So I decided to take the plunge again, this time with a brand that many have actually praised. I recently picked up the Teslong NTG100 to see if it was worth the $72.99 Canadian that it sells for. First, let's see what you get for that money. Okay, the box that this originally came in is in a recycling plant somewhere. You aren't missing much. The money is here in this case. And I would like to thank Teslong for actually including a case. Thank you. Now, this is a non-built-in display model, so you will need something that can receive a signal from the camera, be it a computer, a tablet, or a phone. Now, opening it up, we have here the 42-inch Borescope itself, and I did say that this was 45 inches earlier in the review. My apologies. It is in fact 42 inches. This particular model is a gooseneck design, which has its positive and negatives. Yes, you do get portability and obviously some flexibility, but a rigid borescope I think is always going to give you a little bit more control over the camera while you feed it down a bore. Now here be the display cable that's 60 inches in length and will allow you to hook it up to the aforementioned PC, tablet, or phone a few ways, such as USB Type-C when you hook it up to this, or USB Type-A, or if you pull this a little bit down, micro USB. So that's kind of cool. I like that you get 3 different ways of hooking it up to whatever you're going to use it for. On one end is the control for the brightness of the LED lights, and the other end hooks to the actual borescope itself. Now the rest of this is just paper, a return if you're going to do that. You get yourself a manual, which actually isn't useless, as among other things it tells you not to insert the borescope into yourself. That is a very good idea, by the way. You also get yourself a safety warning guide, and you got a card to download Teslong's app. Finally, you get 3 of these mirrors. One of them is on my borescope at the moment. That's why there's only 2 here, which allows you to view at a 45-degree angle, which you'll probably be using all the time to inspect the sides of a bore. Each one of these measures slightly smaller than 20 caliber. I think I measured them at 0.1955 inches. Thank you for Teslong for including extras. And that's what you get in the box. Assembling it is pretty easy. On the business end, you screw on a mirror on this side. There is a little lock ring, which you can probably see here, which allows you to set the distance of the mirror from the lens itself, which could be useful in focusing on the different sizes of bores. It's a nice touch there to have that. On the other end, you hook the borescope to the data cable. And that's it. Plug it into your device of choice, use whatever software moves you, and you are off to the races. Of course, a reasonable price and ease of use mean very little if the Borescope doesn't actually allow you to inspect a bore effectively. Now, for the purposes of this video, I tested the Borescope, and you'll see the video throughout this section, on 3 different rifles: a CZ457 chambered in .22 long rifle, a Type 56 chambered in 7.62 by 39mm, and a Martini Henry in 5.77 450. Now, those 3 different sizes of bores I think will probably encompass what most people are likely to use this on. Now, this Borescope was designed with bores as narrow as 20 caliber in mind, so it should surprise no one that it actually worked fine in .22 long rifle, something that not every scope can claim. Now, the images produced were very clear and destroyed my illusion that I've been completely removing the carbon ring in my chamber. Yeah, and that bore does need a cleaning. The Type 56 was also clear and without issue. Well, the Borescope's video was without issue, but the Type 56 bore revealed some pitting. Thank you, previous owner, for your lackluster cleaning, or Factory 26 for your less than impressive machining. Either way, again, the image produced was very nice and clear. Now, finally, we have the Martini Henry rifle, and here I did have to slightly adjust the mirror's distance from the lens in order to fine-tune the focus. That didn't take long, and it produced an image about as clear as the previous rifles, though I found that even with the light cranked to maximum, that it was a bit darker than the .22 long rifle and .30 caliber videos. About the only issue that I can report is that the gooseneck Borescope doesn't lend itself particularly easily to rotating while inside the bore. You can get it to go, but a rigid Borescope might be easier to turn by its nature. I think, as you saw from the 3 videos, the NTG100 does a good job of revealing the horrors that your bore may be hiding from you. The images are pretty clear and detailed, and the most complex that the operation can get is largely dependent on what software you use. This is a review, and as always, I am contractually obligated to go over pros and cons. As is with the tradition of this channel, we're going to start with cons. I'm going to be honest with you, there wasn't much in the way of cons. The first is what I stated in the last section, that gooseneck Borescopes can be a bit finicky to rotate while in the bore. That said, if you make the choice of a gooseneck over a rigid Borescope, you're saving money with the understanding that a rigid scope probably would have been a little bit easier to work with. The only other thing that could possibly be an issue, and I'm stretching a little bit with this one, is the 6 LED lights that are ringing the camera. I find that when you turn the wheel, it doesn't like gradually go from 0 to 100, but rather just like starts at 30 to 40% and ramps up quickly to 100%. Now, I personally didn't have an issue with that. I doubt anyone would, but I mention it just in case. Honestly, though, as criticisms go, pretty light. Now, as for pros, a few of them. For the price, you're getting a pretty capable Borescope. Yes, this thing is only 1 megapixel image with a resolution of 1280 by 720, and you can definitely surpass those specs with other Borescopes, but you're going to be paying more money. And to be honest with you, the quality of the image, which you saw earlier in 3 different videos, was more than enough, for me at least, to determine the cleanliness and condition of my rifle bores. I like that you get a case with this. I'm always slightly annoyed things that should have a case don't come with one. I don't need a fancy one, just a place where I can store things in between uses. It coming with 3 of the mirrors is nice. Now, I've personally never broken one with another Borescope, but it's good to know that if I do, I have a couple in reserve. I do wish it had come with different size mirrors that were optimized for larger bores, but you can make do. The listing made me think that this was only going to be a few feet long, but I kind of should have read a little more carefully. The actual Borescope itself is, I think, 45 inches long, but the data cable is another 60 inches. So in reality, I think that's like over 2 meters that you have to work with. So that's great. You can use the software that Teslong suggests, but I had no problem with using it with any software that allows a live feed from a camera. I personally used this on my Linux machine running VLC, and it worked right out of the box. It's nice when you don't need to use, the demon spawn software of Microsoft, Apple, Google, or some other dodgy company you've never even heard of in order to make your equipment work. The prices of Borescopes have dropped in recent years. It wasn't that long ago that you had cheap ones that turned out marginal images or expensive ones, which are awesome, but not much in between. Companies like Teslong have come along to offer a reasonably compelling balance between price and performance, and the NTG100 will probably serve the needs of most people. I don't need a lot from a Borescope. It just needs to fit into my rifles and provide a quality of image that will allow me to check a bore effectively. From that perspective, I can't fault this Borescope. It checks off my relatively modest list of needs, and it does it at a price which isn't onerous. Do you need a Borescope? You can survive an entire life never having Borescoped a rifle. That said, I think someone who's serious about firearms maintenance should have one, particularly if you're into precision shooting. Take precision rimfire, for example. Knowing that you've removed the carbon ring from your chamber is actually a big deal, and probably only really possible using a Borescope. It's also a thing if you collect military surplus rifles. I remember a few years back being greatly tempted by a late 19th century rifle and almost bit until I ran a Borescope and discovered giant pits in the bore. I took a pass, and it was only due to having that Borescope. There are plenty of use cases for Borescopes that I'm not going to get into here, but I think there can be a need for you. Is this that Borescope? Now, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, you don't need a built-in display, and want images useful enough to assist in your maintenance, I think the Teslong NTG100 is worthwhile. I honestly didn't have any issues with this, and it allowed me to discover some things about rifles I bought since the last time I owned a Borescope, and not necessarily welcome things. So yes, if I had to do it over again, I would spend the money on the Teslong NTG100 again. I also don't have any reservations about recommending it to people asking about an inexpensive but capable Borescope. There are better, to be sure, but for me, the price versus performance meets in a place that I'm fine with. So, a recommendation then for the Teslong NTG100 Borescope. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope your firearms maintenance never finds any problems. Take care, and bye-bye.